Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bugcrowd Security Flash stream. I'm here with Adam, who is an application security engineer for Bugcrowd, and we wanted to talk today about the Microsoft TCP/IP vulnerabilities that have come out over the last couple of days. Obviously, a lot of people use Microsoft, and TCP/IP is kind of fundamental to making a computer useful most of the time. So this is a fairly impactful issue. Adam and the crew got busy, just really digging into this whole thing and trying to figure out what's going on. So yeah, Adam, what's happening?
So what's happened is there was a new patch that came out on the 9th. This only happened on February 9th of 2021. It was KB 460131, and it covered two new CVS sensors for RCE. Both are 9.8, so they're really impactful. And both are RCE and TCP/IP, as you said, in Windows. And the thing is, this goes back all the way down to, I believe it was Windows Vista. So
Right.
it goes through all of the editions of Windows, including the server ones. The big one here is that there's two CVs. One seems to be IPv4 related, the other one's IPv6. Honestly, the big one for me, I see, is the IPv4 one. They haven't released full details on these CVs at the moment, and all they've given is remediation advice. What we know from that is that for the IPv4 one, it's got a requirement of dropping source routing behavior. So instead of a ICMP packet used for a ping, to say, hey, I'm here, instead of it returning, sorry, I'm not here, it's just going to have to drop the packet.
Right.
This led a bunch of people to say maybe it's something to do with how the ping requests work, or maybe it's going to be like a ping of death response that we used to have from back in the good old days
Yep.
when everyone was rolling their own stuff. But the question, we don't have any hard evidence at this point. We only have remediation advice. The thing is, though, with these sorts of vulns, people started reverse engineering this the first day it happened.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I was going to
which
ask about that in terms of the typical run of things when there's such a widespread and particularly vulns that can be turned into a worm. I think those are the ones that attract a lot of attention from like a VR and exploit development standpoint. What can we expect in terms of like the timeline to when we see this start to get messed with in the wild?
So the last time we had something like this was actually back in January last year.
Yep.
There was a CVE for the remote desktop protocol in Windows. Again, same issue, affected all of Windows servers, 9.8 CVSS, and released in a security patch. They never announced what the POC was. They didn't give anything like that. It was reverse engineered by the 24th for a reliable DOS exploit. So that's not the full RCE, but it's the first step to getting that RCE. If you
Yeah.
can crash a system, you can figure out going into weird stack canaries and figuring out what's causing that. And then you can get to RCE. That was only 3 days after the DOS, though.
Right.
So
Right.
for rough timelines, 10 days is the expected from last time, and maybe an extra 3 days to get an RCE.
Yeah. And would you say that's true for
Again, a lot
both,
of
or do you think the IPv4 issue is going to attract more attention than the IPv6 one?
I see the IPv4 one being a lot juicier. If I was looking for this sort of stuff, I would be going on that right away, because the IPv6 has one small issue, and that is that what they've stated is it's a out of order packets are being dropped for packet disassembly.
Yep.
And briefly in the blog, they state something about a loopback connection, which a lot of people aren't doing a addressable loopback on IPv6 at the moment, which means it's probably not going to be, popping any
That's
shells tomorrow.
that is fun.
We
Would you?
won't see this affecting everyone for the 240941, basically.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I mean, as a defender, one of the reasons we do these streams is just obviously to unpack what's been kind of broken out there in the internets and the cyber news, so to speak. But then to talk a little bit through what, as a defender, people should be thinking through in terms of actions and steps to take. Like, what's your thinking on that?
Well, right now we know at a minimum there is a patch available. You can go right now, download that patch. It will fix it right now. That's KB 460131. You can download that today, implement it. If you don't have the ability to do that, let's say, for example, you've got a patch requirement, some days required for it, there are workarounds. These can be applied via GPO. And what will happen is all you have to do is drop source routing behavior on IPv4 and just set global reassembly limit to 0 on IPv6.
Yeah.
They're both simple netsh commands, so group policy will sort that for you.
And those mitigations are in the Microsoft advisory itself, right?
Yep, so these are actually in the CVEs in Microsoft Center. You can find them under the CVE details for them,
Very cool.
and they're available right now.
Just backtracking on a couple of acronym fouls, because I'm notorious for those, and I've realized we've committed a couple. What is a CVE and what is CVSS? Just to touch on that briefly.
So a CVE is a common vulnerability exploit. Basically, it's a number given to a vulnerability that you can easily track, find more information on, meaning that you don't get confused based upon, the 400 different RCEs for, PHP-MyAdmin or something.
Yeah, sure.
CVSS is a common vulnerability scoring system. It's used to tell you how dangerous is this vuln, could it be exploited, what could happen for it. If you've got a 1, you've probably got nothing. You got a nothing burger there. If you got a 9.8,
it's a something.
You go and cry. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. No, that's cool. And yeah, I mean CVE in terms of like the way I tend to explain that is a description of a vulnerability that exists in software that lots of people use. So when there's an ID associated with that, that's something that anyone who uses that software, in this case Windows, which is like most people, should at least check in on, if not pay attention to. And CVSS in terms of severity, that was a pretty good. I think the scale of nothing burger to something burger is a pretty memorable way of explaining that for sure. So as a hunter, like one of the things that we see at Bugcrowd is when there's one of these kind of big vulnerability drops and a lot of kind of noise gets generated about it, bug hunters set about trying to find it, trying to figure out how to basically, identify where organizations might be vulnerable, but obviously try to, get a disclosure in or claim a bounty or do all that sort of thing. Like as a hunter, what would your advice to those folk be at this point?
Wait for a reliable RCE exploit. At this moment, if you can get a DOS, it's probably going to be a lower priority. Not going to get as much money out of it. You might get some money out of it, but you may as well wait for the RCE to at least come out. There's no testers for it right now. You can't find a very easy tester as of this stream, at least. And from that, you probably can start seeing this through. The only problem is you need to have Windows machines poking on the internet. Maybe you can find an external facing AD, at which point I'm sorry for any blue teams who have to deal with that. I really am. But yeah, you basically have to have it internet facing at a minimum.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of the number of internet facing Windows machines there are just out there, period, it's not a small number, right?
No.
The tendency would be for those things to be behind a firewall and, in a DMZ or in a corporate network, but there are also a lot that are publicly addressable at this point in time.
Yeah, you've got some jump boxes sitting on the edge of a network. You want your team to be able to jump into the network if something's gone wrong. It's not an impossibility, it's just more unlikely.
Yeah, cloud deployments of Windows, like cloud deployments that involve Windows or a heavy Windows mix are probably something to consider there as well. Like looking at the different, infrastructures and service providers, their ability to roll out Windows. There's a lot of stuff up there that might be directly addressable. I think the thing that caught my interest about this particular issue is it's been a little while since Microsoft have had a good kind of wormable vuln. The idea that RCE can go in, obviously infect the machine, but then have a routine that goes and reinfects other machines at that point. Like this seems to be a candidate for that, right?
Well, that's exactly it. Like the last time we saw this, maybe Bluekeep, that was the last big one that people went, "Oh, this is a little bit bad."
Yep.
If you want to go a little bit further back, we can go back to the SMB-v1 exploits that were popping around from there. That had the same sort of impact because SMB is used on everything. This is probably going to be a little bit worse because TCP/IP, it's a little bit hard to disable, but
hard to avoid.
Hopefully, hopefully people are patching things. Let's hope that.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. So really the net of this, and we'll wrap it up here. The net of it is, for organizations to understand your assets, if you don't already have an asset registry and a patch strategy, then now's a pretty good time to be thinking about one, because we'll start to see some action around this shortly. Um, and if you're not in a position to do that, I think that's where the hunters potentially come into it when it comes time to actually demonstrate where that might have been missed. I mean, where what are we? 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon in Sydney, my time right now. So this is pretty early into the kind of the evolution of how this is all going to play out, and there's, I'm sure, new things that will happen as we go. But at this point in time, for the hunters to be thinking about how they can actually explain to organizations that might have missed stuff in their patch routine, um, explain the risk and the potential impact of that, and for organizations to be mindful and listening to that input, cover more of it off.
The other thing is you've also got a lot of organizations who might have a little bit of slower patching time,
Of
where
course.
they've just had a little bit of slowdown from it, cooling off period. This is one of those vulns where you want to get to it now,
Yep.
because the danger's very high here, and the impact could be catastrophic for your network.
Yeah,
You don't
completely.
want to end up being a victim to something like ransomware or something from this.
Yeah, for sure. And that's ultimately where Bluekeep kind of got its reputation, was being leveraged by ransomware, and it's been similar, I think, for some of those other wormable vulnerabilities. Once they get loose inside a network, they become very useful for that kind of criminal use case. So this seems to be a candidate for that, and a pretty good thing to get ahead of. All right, Adam, thank you so much. Good chat, mate.
Well, thanks for having me.
Cheers.